Free speech is being cut off in France, literally. That's coming up on today's Hot Zone.
This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, Chuck Holton here. I know that was a terrible joke. I shouldn't have used it. You've probably heard about the history teacher in Paris who was beheaded last week for daring to show his students some cartoons, and there was an 18-year-old Chechen migrant from Moscow, a Muslim guy, who followed him home from class and beheaded him in the street in broad daylight. That man was then apprehended by police, or at least they tried to apprehend him, and he threatened them, wouldn't put down the knife, and they ended up shooting and killing him. That has sparked outrage all around France, as far as they've had protests in 8 or 10 different large cities across that country. You've probably seen a little bit about that. I want to give you a little more background about this story, because France right now has something like 7 million Muslims living there. Most of them are immigrants from somewhere else, or at least they're immigrant families, meaning maybe the dad was migrated from Syria and the kids were born there or something like that. They've had a tremendous problem with these Muslim migrants self-radicalizing over time. So they live happily in French culture, which is very secular, for years, do their thing, have a job, have a family, whatever, and one day they go completely jihadi and end up killing people. They've had a tremendous number of terror attacks in France. As a matter of fact, they're so common now that typically they don't even make the news here in the United States. These are ramming attacks, knife attacks, sometimes shootings. They've had bombings, all sorts of things over there. And there's a real undercurrent of anger against the Muslim minority, although they're such a large minority now that the tail wags the dog to some extent. And that undercurrent of anger has fueled a lurch to the right politically, so that Marine Le Pen, for example, has become very popular as a politician. It's interesting to see now, after this attack, the President Macron in France is denouncing these acts of extremism when his policies have led to the kind of extremism that they're seeing. The open door policies that just let people flood in from North Africa and the Middle East, and they had a very progressive policy on that, kind of like you would see in a Joe Biden administration. If Joe Biden wins, you will see a massive wave of migration coming north into the United States again. And as a matter of fact, it would be happening now if it weren't for the COVID crisis. There was a caravan that started up in Honduras just a couple weeks ago, planning to be the first ones in line to get into the United States, but they were turned back in Guatemala because of the COVID crisis, and Guatemala didn't want the risk from COVID coming into their country. If it weren't for that, there would be this conga line starting up in anticipation of a Joe Biden presidency. But you can guarantee if Joe Biden wins, you're going to see that massive number of people coming to our southern border. And how we deal with that will determine the future of our country, whether it'll determine what our culture will look like and what our freedoms will look like. Because as we saw here in Paris just last week, freedom of speech is not really a thing when lawless people will literally take the law into their own hands and will kill you for showing a cartoon. So here's a little more background about the immigration issue in Europe and in France especially, from a trip that I did there a couple years ago. Check it out.
Europe is undergoing a massive transformation as millions of immigrants surge north out of Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, drawn by the prospect of generous social programs and a better way of life. In the last few years, the numbers have been staggering. 1.8 million migrants in 2015 alone, and it's causing tensions among the EU member states as countries like Greece, Hungary, and Sweden shoulder a disproportionate share of the burden. And a corresponding uptick in immigrant-related violence has spawned a populist uprising that is sweeping the continent. Paris, France, once synonymous with romantic getaways, fine dining, and world-renowned artwork. In recent years, however, it's become better known for horrific scenes like Charlie Hebdo, the Bataclan Theater, and other massacres, all with one thing in common: radical Islamic jihad.
Well, of course, the French culture has been changed. Society is becoming more and more violent. A culture of confrontation has been important in France. It's not only the responsibility of the immigration, it's the responsibility of the politicians who have really hidden the topic, who have refused to confront it. They were not taking responsibility to tell the truth to the people and trying to assimilate these people.
Our government became too much social. Those people, they come here and they want it all, they want it now, and the government to give to those people what a lot of people, French people, don't have.
It makes heavier the burden for the other people who are working, and then it attracts people who want to live on this welfare state. You're losing the best, you're getting, I won't say the worst, but you're getting people who want to live with the welfare state. The balance is broken.
Tensions are high in France, which has seen more than one terror attack per month since the terrible attacks on the Bataclan Theater and National Sports Arena in 2015. But French politicians are convinced the best way to combat this violent trend is to keep French citizens unarmed. We just found a gun store here. All of these guns you see, though, are not real. They have guns that fire blanks, they have airsoft, and they have BB guns, as well as some hunting rifles. But it's not possible to buy a pistol here in France. We went yesterday to Bataclan. Those attackers used rifles, grenades, and explosive vests. All of those things are illegal in France. If I live here and I want to get a pistol and protect myself, I'm not allowed to do that. You have to understand the culture in the United States. It's much, much different. I mean, I carry a pistol everywhere in the United States. I go to the bank with a pistol. I go to church with a pistol.
Well, then you can defend yourself if a bad guy is coming. That's the problem. That's the problem we had at the Bataclan. I mean, the bullets were coming only from one side. Nobody could fire back.
I realize the culture is very different here, but has there been any talk about I should be able to defend myself?
Well, this is not a debate. This is not in the public debate.
No.
I mean, if I raise this issue, I would be considered as a nutcase. You know, the guy's insane. Okay, it just doesn't make sense.
It's not even
it's not an option. It's nobody. I mean, not a single candidate at the presidential election would come and say, "Look, I want to make you be able to carry a gun." You know, I've spent so much time in the States, so I really understand the difference and how it seems bizarre. But I mean, had people had guns at the Bataclan, it would have been a different story.
Anti-government rioting has also swept the nation. And there are some places around Paris the police say they just won't go. That means citizens in these areas are left with no good options for protecting their families, as the government's ineffectiveness has been shown during recent violent protests.
The police has not the ability to stop the rioters. They don't have the right to fight back. So this is why you can see all these cops, you know, for example, when they're torching their cars with a policeman inside. That's insane. And you know, the policeman who just went out of the car and who didn't fight back against the rioters got the Medal of Honor from the French Minister of Interior, which is absurd. I mean, the guy has been praised for not responding to the rioters.
They're not being allowed to even defend themselves against the rioters?
Not only that, their recommendation is don't defend, don't fight back, and if you get hurt, you'll get a medal.
Fox News coined the term no-go zones in France. The rest of the mainstream media has jumped on them and said that's fake, that's not true, there's no such thing. Is it true or not?
Well, ask the police. Ask the police if they want to get in some areas. Ask the firemen, ask the ambulances. They know they can't get there because they will first create more turmoil, and second, they will be under assault in some areas. They don't want to take the risk, so these are no-go zones.
They exist. They don't like to see police there. When police officer, patrol police goes there, they send them things with fire or big,
they get attacked.
Stuff. They get attacked. People are afraid. They are afraid.
Well, that's no way to live.
It's not a way to live.
We traveled around Paris to several of the so-called no-go zones. We were warned not to be seen filming in those areas, so we used hidden cameras to record what we saw.
No police. No police.
You don't let the police in here?
Yeah.
No police.
Police ici. Police ici. Stop.
So we were just approached by these two young men while we were filming, and between my broken French and their broken English, they communicated to us that we had to be careful filming around there because there was a lot of drug trafficking, and that if the police showed up, it would get very bad between them and the police. They did not appreciate police presence, and that if there was police in the area, that there would be a fight. While on the outside, things don't look that bad in this neighborhood, under the surface, there are some tensions that are right at the boiling point.
We need to transform our internal and foreign policy. You cannot deal with terrorists outside and fight terrorism inside. These are the same. I can't tell you how many people coming from Syria would become terrorists here, but I can tell you that the huge majority of these people coming to Europe don't want to live the way we live. They don't want to adopt our European way of life. They're pretending that they're fleeing a country and societies which are living under Sharia law, but they're trying, when they're getting here, to impose this kind of social order.
Those people that don't feel comfortable here and the way the French people, European people live, I think they just have to just go back to their home.
How does it make you feel that those people don't want to go back to where their worldview is normal? They want to make you live like they live. They want to change the way you live.
I will never do that. If a third war comes, I will be the resistance. I will be Matahara, trust me. No, that will never, no.
You're not going to wear a burqa?
I will not, never.
It was clear during our visit that France is facing a crisis of culture that may not be reversible. And there are some unsettling similarities with issues we're facing back in the U.S. And unless our people can effectively defend our Second Amendment rights against those who would disarm us, we may be facing a very similar future.
Okay, folks, thanks for watching The Hot Zone. I appreciate all of you. It's an amazing thing to see the way that this thing is growing. I'm on my way to Azerbaijan and Armenia on actually tomorrow, Thursday. So I will be in the air probably somewhere around Qatar on Friday. So not sure what we'll have for a podcast on Friday, but stay tuned. I'll try to get something up, and we'll definitely have some good stuff for you next week from the conflict in Armenia. We're going to try to find some people who are very needy, and we're going to try to help them, because here on The Hot Zone, we don't just make the news, we make the news better, and we do it with your help. So thanks for being a part of it. I'm Chuck Holton. Thanks for watching.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.